She had 73 minutes to change her life, until one decision on a crowded bus erased everything she had planned. On a freezing Chicago morning, Alicia Carter was finally on her way to the interview that could pull her out of years of struggle. Every second mattered, until a sudden jolt sent an elderly white woman crashing to the floor, and no one moved. When the driver forced the injured woman off the bus, Alicia made a choice that cost her everything. But minutes later, standing alone in the rain, she had no idea. The son of the woman she saved was about to change her life forever. The rain came down in thin, stubborn lines, the kind that didn't soak you all at once but found their way into your clothes anyway, seeping through seams, settling into your bones. Chicago mornings had a way of doing that, making everything feel colder than it should, even in late fall. Bus 27 groaned as it pulled away from the curb on Halsted Street, its tires hissing against wet pavement. Inside, it was packed shoulder to shoulder, the air thick with the smell of damp coats, burnt coffee, and the quiet exhaustion of people already late for something. Alicia Carter stood wedged between a man in a construction jacket and a woman scrolling endlessly on her phone. One hand gripped the overhead rail, steady but tense. The other clutched a navy blue folder so tightly the edges were beginning to bend. 6:47 a.m. She checked the time again, even though she already knew it. She had planned this morning down to the minute. 35 minutes on the bus. 10 minutes to walk from the stop to the glass tower downtown. 15 minutes in the restroom to smooth her hair, fix her makeup, breathe. At exactly 8 a.m., she would sit across from a panel at Brooks Tech Dynamics, one of the biggest firms in the city, and prove that she belonged there. This wasn't just another interview. This was the one. The job paid more than she'd ever made in her life. Enough to move out of the cramped studio apartment in South Side where the radiator barely worked and the ceiling leaked when it rained too hard. Enough to stop juggling bills like they were ticking bombs. Enough to finally feel like she wasn't one missed paycheck away from everything falling apart. Alicia pressed the folder closer to her chest. Inside it was everything she had worked for, her resume, certifications, letters of recommendation from people who had seen something in her when most didn't bother looking. She had ironed her blazer twice that morning, woken up before sunrise just to make sure every crease was sharp, every strand of hair pulled back clean. Because she knew how this worked. People didn't expect much from someone who looked like her, came from where she came from, so she had to be perfect. The bus lurched forward again, rattling slightly as it hit a stretch of uneven road. Conversations were low, almost non-existent. Most people stared straight ahead or down at their phones, wrapped in their own worlds. Alicia shifted her weight slightly, and that's when she noticed her. Up near the front, in one of the priority seats, sat an elderly white woman. She looked out of place. Not because she didn't belong on a bus, but because something about her carried a different kind of life. Her coat, though worn, had once been expensive. Her silver hair was neatly pinned back, even if a few strands had escaped in the humidity. Her posture was stiff, controlled, like she was holding herself together out of sheer will. Her hand rested against her hip, not casually, protectively. Alicia narrowed her eyes just slightly, studying her without meaning to. The woman's face tightened for a moment, a flicker of pain that passed quickly, but not quickly enough. Alicia noticed. She always noticed. Her mother used to say that was both a gift and a burden. "You see people too clearly," she'd told her once. "That means you'll feel things other people don't." Alicia had learned early on that most people chose not to see. It was easier that way. The bus rolled through an intersection, brakes squealing lightly as it slowed, then surged forward again. The driver muttered something under his breath, one hand tapping impatiently against the steering wheel. Outside, the rain picked up, drumming softly against the windows. Inside, everything felt suspended in that strange, quiet rhythm of a city waking up. Then it happened. The bus hit a pothole, not a small one, a deep, jagged crater hidden beneath a layer of rainwater. The impact was sudden and violent. The entire bus jolted. Alicia's grip tightened instinctively on the rail, her body swaying but steady. Up front, there was a sharp sound. Not loud, but unmistakable. A gasp. The elderly woman pitched forward, her body folding awkwardly as she slipped out of her seat. Her hand reached for something, anything, but found only empty air. She hit the floor hard. The sound of it cut through the bus like a crack of thunder. For a second, everything froze. Alicia's heart skipped. The woman lay there, half twisted, one hand pressed tightly against her hip. Her face had gone pale, too pale, and her lips parted in a thin, silent cry. "Jesus!" someone muttered behind Alicia. Heads turned. Of course they did. People looked. They always looked. A man near the front leaned slightly forward, concern flickering across his face. A woman across the aisle pulled one earbud out, eyes widening for a moment. Then, just as quickly, something shifted. The man leaned back again. The woman put her earbud back in. The moment passed, like it had never mattered. Alicia felt something tighten in her chest. The woman tried to move. Her arm trembled as she pushed against the floor, but the second she put weight on her hip, her body stiffened. A sharp breath escaped her, fragile and strained. I'm okay," she said, though nothing about her looked okay. Her voice was thin, shaky. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror, irritation already settling into his expression. "Ma'am," he called out, voice flat. "You need to get up." The woman swallowed, trying again. "I just need a moment." "I can't wait," the driver cut in. "We're already behind schedule." Alicia blinked, her grip tightening on the rail. Behind her, someone sighed. Another person shifted uncomfortably, but no one moved. No one stepped forward. The driver slowed the bus abruptly, pulling it over to the side of the road, not at a stop, just a random stretch of curb lined with closed storefronts and puddles gathering along the sidewalk. He opened the front doors with a sharp hiss. "Ma'am," he said, louder now, "you're gonna have to get off." Alicia's stomach dropped. "She's hurt," Alicia said before she could stop herself. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. The driver didn't even turn around. "Policy," he said. "If someone gets injured, they can't stay on the bus. Liability." "That doesn't make any sense," Alicia replied, stepping forward now, pushing slightly through the bodies in front of her. The woman on the floor looked up, eyes glassy, confusion and pain mixing together. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't stand." "Then you can sit out there until help comes," the driver said, gesturing toward the open doors. "But you can't stay on my bus." Silence spread again. Heavy, uncomfortable, but still, no one moved. Alicia looked around, at the man pretending to be asleep, at the woman glued to her phone, at the rows of people who had decided, collectively, that this wasn't their problem. Her chest tightened. She had seen this before. Too many times. People stepping around something painful because it was easier than stepping into it. The woman on the floor began to drag herself forward, inch by inch, her movements slow and uneven. Each shift of her body seemed to cost her something. The rain outside fell harder now, streaking the glass. Alicia's eyes dropped to her watch. 6:52 a.m. Her pulse quickened. If she stayed on this bus, she could still make it. She could still walk into that building, sit down in that chair, and maybe, just maybe, change everything. Her fingers tightened around the folder. This was it. Her way out. Her chance. She looked back at the front, at the woman struggling just to move, at the open doors, at the rain waiting outside. Her heart pounded, loud, relentless. The bus engine rumbled beneath her feet, impatient. The driver tapped the steering wheel again. "Let's go," he muttered. "I don't have all day." Alicia swallowed hard. Her future was right here, within reach. All she had to do was stay. She glanced once more at her watch, then at the woman, then back at the door. Time seemed to stretch, thin and fragile, and in that moment, everything came down to one choice. Stay and save herself, or step off and risk losing it all. Alicia took a breath and moved. Her hand slipped from the overhead rail, her fingers brushing against the damp metal as she pushed forward through the crowded aisle. The folder stayed pressed tight against her chest, like if she let it go for even a second, everything inside it, every late night, every sacrifice would scatter into nothing. "Excuse me," she muttered, her voice steady but urgent. No one really made space for her. They shifted just enough, reluctantly, like she was an inconvenience passing through their morning routine. Up ahead, the woman was still on the floor. Evelyn Brooks. Though Alicia didn't know her name yet, she could already see the way pain had settled deep into her bones. Her hand trembled as she tried to push herself up again, her breath catching halfway through the effort. The bus driver didn't even turn this time. "Ma'am, I said you need to get off," he called, sharper now. "I can't keep stopping like this." Alicia felt something flare in her chest. Not just anger, something older, something that had been building for years. "She can't even stand," Alicia said, louder now. A few heads turned again. A man near the front frowned slightly, like he might say something, but then didn't. A woman in a gray coat glanced up from her phone, then quickly looked back down, thumbs moving faster across the screen. It was like watching a room full of people slowly decide not to care. Alicia swallowed. She had seen this before. She was 8 years old when her mother slipped on an icy sidewalk outside a grocery store. Alicia remembered the sound, sharp and sudden, the way her mother had hit the ground and gone still for a second. People had looked. Of course they had looked. One man had even paused, his grocery bags hanging at his sides. He'd stared for a moment, eyes narrowing like he was trying to figure out if it was serious. Then he'd kept walking. Everyone had. It had been Alicia, 8 years old, hands too small, voice too thin, who had run inside the store to find help. She remembered standing there, breathless, explaining to a cashier what had happened while the woman barely glanced up. "Someone will go check," the cashier had said, already ringing up the next customer. Alicia had gone back outside alone. Her mother was still on the ground, still waiting, still invisible. Alicia blinked, pulling herself back to the present. The bus smelled heavier now, like wet fabric and stale air pressing in on her. Evelyn let out a small sound, barely a whisper, as she shifted her weight again. Her face tightened, eyes squeezing shut, as if she could will the pain away. "I'm sorry," Evelyn murmured. "I didn't mean to cause—" "You didn't cause anything," Alicia cut in, stepping closer. The driver sighed loudly. "Look, I don't have time for this," he said. "Either she gets off or we all sit here. Your choice." Your choice. The words hung there, heavier than they should have been. Alicia turned slowly, looking back at the rows of faces behind her. No one met her eyes. A man in a suit stared out the window like something fascinating had suddenly appeared in the rain. The woman with the phone angled it slightly away, pretending she hadn't heard anything at all. Even the man closest to the aisle shifted his body, subtly turning his shoulder as if to close himself off from the situation. Alicia felt it then, that familiar, sinking realization. This is what it looks like when people decide you don't matter. Her grip tightened on the folder. She thought about the interview, the panel of strangers who would be waiting at 8 a.m., glancing at the clock when she didn't walk in on time, the quiet judgment that would follow, the polite email that would say they had decided to move forward with other candidates. She thought about the apartment she couldn't afford to stay in much longer, the overdue notices sitting unopened on her kitchen counter, the way she had stood in front of the mirror that morning, practicing her smile, telling herself over and over, "This is it. Don't mess this up." Her future wasn't abstract. It was right there, measured in minutes, measured in decisions like this. "Ma'am," the driver snapped again. "I'm not asking." Evelyn's hand slipped against the floor. She winced, her breath hitching again as she tried, one last time, to push herself upright. She couldn't. Her arm gave out halfway. She froze, her face going pale. For a moment, the bus felt too quiet, too still. Alicia's heart pounded in her ears. She looked at Evelyn. Really looked. Not as a problem. Not as a delay. As a person. Someone who had probably lived a long life, who had once walked quickly, confidently, without pain. Someone who now sat on a dirty bus floor, apologizing for something that wasn't her fault. Someone everyone else had decided to leave behind. Alicia's chest tightened. Her mother's voice echoed faintly in her memory. "People don't always mean to ignore you," she used to say. "Sometimes they just don't want to deal with the cost of caring." The cost of caring. Alicia glanced down at her watch again. 6:53 a.m. Every second felt louder now. She imagined standing there as the doors closed, watching the woman struggle out onto the street alone, telling herself it wasn't her responsibility, telling herself she had no choice. And maybe, just maybe, she would make it to that interview. Maybe she would get the job. Maybe everything would change. But something inside her shifted at that thought. Something didn't sit right. Because she knew herself. She knew what would happen later. Tonight, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. She would see this moment again, over and over. She would hear that small, broken sound Evelyn made when she hit the floor. She would remember the way everyone had looked away, and she would know she had done the same. Alicia exhaled slowly. Her shoulders dropped just a fraction. The tension didn't leave her body, but it changed. Like something had settled into place. She stepped forward again, closing the last bit of distance between herself and Evelyn. "I've got you," she said softly. Evelyn looked up at her, confusion flickering across her face. "You don't," she started. "I know," Alicia said gently. "But I'm here anyway." The driver scoffed. "Great," he muttered. "You two can figure it out off the bus." Alicia didn't respond. She crouched carefully, setting her folder down on the nearest empty seat without taking her eyes off Evelyn. Rain streaked the windows behind them, blurring the outside world into gray motion. Inside, everything felt sharper, closer, more real. Alicia reached out slowly, keeping her movements deliberate, careful. "Can you lean on me?" she asked. Evelyn hesitated, her pride and pain warring across her face. Then, slowly, she nodded. Alicia slid one arm around her shoulders, feeling how light and fragile she was beneath the damp coat. "Okay," Alicia whispered. "We're going to take this one step at a time." Behind her, the bus engine rumbled louder, impatient, waiting. Alicia didn't look back, because she already knew. Once she stood up, once she walked toward those open doors, there would be no going back. Alicia tightened her grip around Evelyn's shoulders and slowly began to rise. The older woman gasped as soon as her weight shifted, her body tensing, her hand clutching Alicia's arm with surprising strength. "I'm sorry," Evelyn whispered again, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to. Don't, Alicia said quietly. Just lean on me. It took everything Alicia had to steady them both. Evelyn's legs barely held, her right foot dragging slightly as they turned toward the front of the bus. The doors stood open. Cold air rushed in, carrying the sharp scent of rain and asphalt. It wrapped around them like a warning. Behind Alicia, the bus remained silent. No one offered help, no one stepped forward. The only sound was the low rumble of the engine and the faint tapping of rain against metal. Alicia didn't look back. She couldn't. If she did, she knew she might hesitate. And hesitation would cost her everything. Step by step, she guided Evelyn forward. The distance from the aisle to the door wasn't far, but it felt endless. Every inch was a negotiation with pain. Evelyn's breath came in shallow bursts, her face drawn tight. Alicia could feel her shaking, the tremor running through her body like something fragile about to break. "You're doing fine," Alicia murmured. "Just a little more." The bus driver shifted in his seat, watching them with a look that was more annoyance than concern. "Careful on the steps," he said, not unkindly, but not kindly either. Just detached. Alicia reached the front, pausing at the edge of the steps. Rain blew in sideways, dotting her face, soaking into the sleeve of her blazer. She glanced outside. The street was nearly empty. Closed storefronts lined the block. A flickering neon sign buzzed faintly in the distance. Water pooled along the curb, rippling with each drop that hit its surface. No crowd, no shelter, just gray sky and wet pavement. Alicia swallowed. This was it. She shifted her weight, adjusting her hold on Evelyn. "Okay," she said softly. "We're going down, slow." Evelyn nodded weakly. The first step was the hardest. Evelyn's foot hovered for a second, then lowered cautiously. The moment it touched the metal edge, her body stiffened, a sharp breath escaping her lips. Alicia tightened her arm around her. "I've got you," she whispered again. They moved together. Second step. Third. By the time they reached the bottom, both of them were breathing harder. Alicia guided Evelyn onto the sidewalk, her shoes immediately sinking slightly into the shallow water gathered there. The rain didn't stop. It never did in moments like this. Behind them, the bus doors hissed. For just a second, Alicia stood still. She didn't turn around, but she felt it. The presence of it. The bus. Her way out. Her chance then. The doors slammed shut. The engine roared, and bus 27 pulled away, disappearing into the gray morning. Alicia watched it go. Her chest felt hollow, like something had just been pulled out of her, clean and final. That was it. There goes your future. The thought came uninvited, sharp and cruel. She exhaled slowly, her breath visible in the cold air. Then she looked down at Evelyn. The woman was trembling now, her weight sagging slightly against Alicia. "We need to get you somewhere dry," Alicia said, scanning the street. A bus shelter sat about half a block ahead, nothing more than a metal bench and a scratched plexiglass wall, but it was something. "Can you make it there?" Alicia asked. Evelyn followed her gaze, her lips pressing together. "I'll try." That was enough. Alicia adjusted her grip and started forward. Each step was slow, measured. The rain soaked through Alicia's clothes within minutes. Her blazer clung to her shoulders, heavy and cold. Strands of her hair loosened, sticking to her forehead. Cars passed occasionally, tires spraying water as they rushed by. None of them slowed. None of them stopped. The city moved on, like it always did. Alicia focused on the rhythm of their steps. Left, right, pause, breathe. Evelyn stumbled once, her foot slipping slightly on the wet pavement. Alicia caught her quickly, tightening her hold. I'm so sorry, Evelyn whispered again, her voice barely audible over the rain. For what? Alicia replied. For ruining your morning. Alicia almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it wasn't. It was the kind of statement that came from a lifetime of being told you were a burden. You didn't ruin anything, Alicia said. Evelyn didn't respond. Maybe she didn't believe her. They reached the shelter after what felt like far longer than it should have taken. Alicia guided Evelyn to the bench, lowering her carefully. The older woman let out a shaky breath as she sat, her body folding slightly as she tried to find a position that didn't hurt. Alicia stepped back just enough to look at her. Up close, Evelyn looked even more fragile. Her skin was pale, her hands still trembling, her lips slightly blue from the cold. Alicia shrugged off her blazer without thinking. It was the one she had ironed so carefully that morning. The one she had chosen because it made her look like she belonged in that interview room. She hesitated for half a second, then draped it over Evelyn's shoulders. The fabric darkened instantly as it absorbed the rain. You need this more than I do, Alicia said. Evelyn's eyes widened slightly. I can't take... You're not taking it, Alicia interrupted gently. You're borrowing it. Evelyn looked down at the blazer, her fingers brushing the damp fabric. Something in her expression shifted. Not just gratitude, something deeper, something quieter. Alicia reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Her hands were cold now, her fingers stiff as she dialed. The line rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Finally, a voice answered. Emergency services. What is your situation? Alicia explained quickly, location, injury, age. Her voice stayed steady, even though her heart wasn't. We'll dispatch a unit, the operator said. Estimated wait time is approximately 45 minutes. Alicia blinked. 45 minutes? She repeated. Yes, ma'am. We're experiencing high call volume. The line clicked. Gone. Alicia lowered the phone slowly. 45 minutes. She looked at Evelyn, at the rain, at the empty street. Then she opened her rideshare app. No drivers nearby. Wait time, 38 minutes. Another app, 42 minutes. Alicia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Of course it wouldn't be easy. Evelyn shifted on the bench, wincing. Did you reach someone? She asked. Yeah, Alicia said, forcing a small smile. They're coming. Eventually, maybe. Evelyn nodded, though her eyes said she understood more than Alicia wanted to admit. They sat there in the shelter, the rain forming a curtain around them. Time stretched. Every minute felt heavier than the last. Alicia glanced down at her phone again. 7:12 a.m. Her interview was in less than an hour. Downtown, across the city. Even if she left right now, even if she ran, she wouldn't make it. Not anymore. The realization settled in quietly this time. No sharp edge, no sudden break. Just a slow, undeniable truth. She had already made her choice. Evelyn followed her gaze, noticing the time on the screen. That was important, wasn't it? She asked softly. Alicia didn't answer right away. She watched the rain hit the pavement, watched the ripples spread outward, overlapping, disappearing. Then she nodded. Yeah, she said. Evelyn swallowed, her eyes lowering. I'm so sorry. Alicia looked at her, really looked, and for the first time she saw past the coat, past the pain. She saw the guilt, the weight, the same kind of weight Alicia had carried for years. It's okay, Alicia said quietly. It wasn't, but she said it anyway. because right now, it had to be. A car sped past, water spraying up along the curb. Neither of them flinched. They just sat there, two strangers under a small shelter, waiting for help, for something to change, for someone to show up. And somewhere deep down, a question began to form. Had Alicia just lost everything, or stepped into something she couldn't yet see? The rain answered for her. It came down harder now, tapping against the plastic roof of the shelter in a steady, unforgiving rhythm. Water gathered along the edges, dripping in uneven intervals, forming small streams that traced the cracked sidewalk. Alicia sat beside Evelyn, her hands wrapped around her phone, though there was nothing left to do with it. No rides available, no faster help coming, just waiting. Evelyn's breathing had steadied slightly, but every now and then her face would tighten, a quiet reminder that the pain hadn't gone anywhere. "You should go," Evelyn said after a while. Her voice was softer now, almost swallowed by the rain. Alicia didn't respond right away. She kept her eyes on the street. "You don't need to stay," Evelyn continued. "You've already done more than anyone else." Alicia let out a small breath, almost a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "I'm not leaving you out here," she said. "You don't even know me," Evelyn replied. Alicia turned her head slightly. "I don't have to." Evelyn looked at her for a long moment, studying her face like she was trying to understand something deeper than the words. "You're going to miss something important," she said quietly. Alicia didn't deny it. The truth sat between them, heavy and undeniable. "I already did," Alicia said. Silence followed. Not empty silence, the kind that carries meaning. Evelyn looked down at Alicia's blazer draped over her shoulders, her fingers gently gripping the fabric. "This is nice," she said. "You must have had somewhere to be." Alicia's eyes flicked to the soaked sleeve, now wrinkled, the sharp lines she had ironed earlier completely gone. "Yeah," she said. "I did." Evelyn swallowed. "I'm so sorry." This time, Alicia didn't brush it off. She leaned back slightly against the shelter wall, the cold seeping through her damp clothes. "It's not your fault," she said. It came out more tired than comforting. Evelyn nodded, though her expression didn't quite believe it. A car slowed briefly as it passed, headlights cutting through the gray morning. For a second, Alicia thought it might stop. It didn't. It kept going. Alicia watched it disappear. Then another car. Same thing. Slowed. Looked. Moved on. It wasn't just the bus. It wasn't just those people. It was everywhere. The city had a way of teaching you that stopping cost something, and most people weren't willing to pay. Alicia shifted in her seat, pulling her phone out again. She tried another ride service. Still nothing. She called a taxi line. A tired voice answered. "Dispatch." "Hi," Alicia said quickly. "I need a pickup. Injured passenger. We're on Halsted, near. Earliest we can get there is about an hour." The man interrupted. "An hour?" Alicia's voice tightened. "She's hurt." "Ma'am, we've got limited drivers this morning. Weather's backed everything up." Click. The line went dead. Alicia stared at her phone for a second longer than necessary, then lowered it slowly. Evelyn watched her. "No luck?" Alicia shook her head. "We'll figure something out," she said. She didn't know how, but she said it anyway. Because sometimes words were the only thing you had. A gust of wind pushed rain sideways into the shelter, dotting Alicia's face again. She wiped it away absent-mindedly. Her fingers were starting to go numb. Evelyn shivered under the blazer. "You're cold," Alicia said. "I've been colder," Evelyn replied faintly. Alicia gave a small nod, though she knew that wasn't the point. The minutes stretched. 7:28 a.m. Alicia checked the time again. She didn't need to, but she did. Her interview had already started without her. Somewhere downtown, in a glass building with polished floors and quiet hallways, people were probably sitting in a conference room, glancing at the door, checking their watches. Moving on. Her name was probably already crossed off a list. Just like that. Alicia leaned forward slightly, resting her elbows on her knees, her hands hanging loosely between them. For a moment, the weight of it hit her. Not all at once, but enough. She closed her eyes briefly. In her mind, she saw herself walking into that room, standing tall, answering every question perfectly, proving them wrong, proving all of them wrong. Then the image slipped, replaced by this one. Rain, cold, an empty street. A stranger beside her. Alicia opened her eyes again. Evelyn was watching her. "You're thinking about it," Evelyn said. Alicia didn't pretend otherwise. "Yeah, you should be there." Alicia let out a quiet breath. "Maybe." Evelyn hesitated, then spoke again. "If you go now, you might still catch someone. Explain. Ask for another chance." Alicia considered that. Just for a second. She imagined standing up, running, flagging down a cab, getting there late, soaked, breathless, trying to explain. Would they listen? Would they care? Or would they see exactly what she feared? Someone unreliable. Someone who didn't show up. Someone not worth the risk. Alicia shook her head slightly. "I don't think it works like that," she said. Evelyn's lips pressed together. "No," she admitted. "It probably doesn't." Another silence. Longer this time. Then Evelyn spoke again, her voice quieter than before. "You know, when you get to my age, you start noticing things you didn't before." Alicia glanced at her. "Like what?" Evelyn looked out at the rain. "Like how easy it is for people to disappear," she said. Alicia's chest tightened slightly. Evelyn continued. "You can be surrounded by people and still be completely alone. One bad moment, one fall, and suddenly you're just in the way." Her hand rested lightly against her hip again. "They don't mean to ignore you," she added. "At least most of them don't. They just don't want to be the one who stops." Alicia looked down at the pavement. "I know," she said quietly. Evelyn turned to her. "But you did." Alicia didn't answer, because she didn't know what to do with that. A distant siren echoed faintly somewhere across the city. Both of them looked up instinctively. Hope flickered, then faded as the sound moved farther away. Not for them. Not yet. Alicia leaned back again, her head resting briefly against the cold plastic behind her. Her body ached. Not from effort, from everything else, from the decision, from what it cost, from not knowing what came next. Evelyn shifted beside her. "You didn't have to do this," she said. Alicia turned her head slowly. "I know." "Then why did you?" The question lingered. Simple, direct, and harder to answer than it should have been. Alicia stared out at the street, watching the rain blur everything together. Then she spoke. "Because I've been on the other side of this." Evelyn frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Alicia hesitated, then said it anyway. "Someone I loved needed help once," she said, "and nobody stopped." Evelyn's expression softened. I'm sorry. Alicia nodded once. Yeah. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. The meaning was already there. Evelyn looked down at her hands, then back at Alicia. Well, she said gently, you changed that today. Alicia didn't feel like she had. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But she didn't argue. They sat there again. Rain, silence, waiting. And for the first time since stepping off the bus, Alicia stopped thinking about what she had lost and started wondering, what happens next when you choose to stay? The answer came slowly, not as a moment, but as a realization. The rain eased just slightly, softening into a steady drizzle, but the cold didn't lift. It settled deeper, clinging to Alicia's skin, seeping through her clothes like a quiet reminder that time was still moving, even if it didn't feel like it. Alicia checked her phone again. 7:46 a.m. Her interview had started nearly an hour ago. No call, no message, nothing. Of course not. She already knew how this worked. She didn't belong to the kind of world where people waited for you. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees, her phone hanging loosely in her hand. Then, a vibration, a sharp, sudden buzz that made her heart jump. She looked down quickly. An email notification. Her breath caught. For a second, she didn't open it, didn't want to, because hope, even a small amount, could still hurt. But she already knew. She tapped the screen. The message opened instantly. Dear Ms. Carter, we noted your absence from today's scheduled interview. As outlined in our policy, we require at least 24 hours notice for rescheduling. Unfortunately, we will be moving forward with other candidates. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. The words didn't hit all at once. They settled, slowly, like rain soaking into the ground. Alicia stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered, as if she might scroll, as if there might be more. There wasn't. That was it. No second chance, no explanation needed, just done. She read it again. Then once more. The same words, the same ending. Her chest tightened, not sharply this time, not like something breaking, but like something collapsing inward. Quiet, controlled, final. I had one shot, she whispered, barely realizing she'd said it out loud. Evelyn turned her head. What is it? She asked gently. Alicia didn't answer right away. She locked her phone and lowered it into her lap. For a moment, she just looked at the street, at the passing cars, at the people who moved through the world without noticing moments like this. Then she spoke. It's gone, she said. Evelyn's brow furrowed slightly. The job? Alicia nodded once. They moved on. Evelyn's lips parted, then pressed together again. I'm so sorry, she said softly. This time, Alicia didn't respond, because there was nothing to say. No way to soften it. No way to pretend it didn't matter. It did. It mattered more than she wanted to admit. The silence stretched between them again, but it felt different now. Heavier, more real. Alicia leaned back slowly, her head resting against the cold plastic of the shelter. She stared up at the grauman sky through the scratched surface. This was supposed to be the day everything changed. She had pictured it so clearly. Walking out of that building with something solid in her hands. A future. A way forward. Instead, she was here. Cold. Wet. Sitting on a bench beside a stranger. Holding nothing. The rain tapped softly overhead. Steady. Unchanging. Alicia closed her eyes for a moment, and for the first time since stepping off the bus, she let herself feel it. Not anger, Not regret, just loss. Quiet and deep. Evelyn shifted beside her. "You should hate me," she said suddenly. Alicia opened her eyes. "What?" Evelyn's gaze stayed fixed on the ground. "You should be angry," she continued. "You gave up something important for someone you don't even know." Alicia studied her for a moment. The guilt in her voice wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was quiet. Heavy. Real. Alicia shook her head slightly. "I don't hate you," she said. Evelyn let out a small, disbelieving breath. "You should." "I don't," Alicia repeated. "Why not?" The question came quickly this time, almost desperate. Alicia thought about it. Really thought. Then she answered. "Because you didn't take anything from me," she said. "I made a choice." Evelyn looked up at her. "And if it was the wrong one?" she asked. Alicia held her gaze. "Then it was mine to make." The words surprised even her, but once they were said, they felt true. Evelyn blinked, her eyes softening slightly. "You're stronger than you think," she murmured. Alicia gave a small shake of her head. "No," she said quietly. "I'm just tired of pretending I don't see things." Evelyn watched her carefully. "What do you mean?" Alicia looked out at the street again. "I mean, it would have been easy to stay on that bus," she said. "Pretend it wasn't my problem. Tell myself someone else would help." She paused. "But I knew they wouldn't." The truth of it settled between them. Simple. Uncomfortable. Real. Evelyn nodded slowly. "That's what scares people," she said. "Knowing that if they don't stop, no one will." Alicia didn't respond, because she knew that was true too. A siren echoed faintly again in the distance. Closer this time. Alicia straightened slightly, her attention sharpening. Evelyn noticed too. "Is that—" "Maybe," Alicia said, hope flickering again. They both listened. The sound grew louder, clearer. Then, an ambulance turned the corner at the far end of the street, lights flashing against the gray morning. Alicia let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Finally," she whispered. The ambulance slowed, then pulled up along the curb in front of the shelter. The doors opened quickly. 2 paramedics stepped out, moving with calm efficiency. "Who called it in?" one of them asked. "I did," Alicia said, standing quickly. Her legs felt stiff, her body heavy, but she pushed through it. They approached Evelyn, asking questions, checking her vitals, examining her hip. "Possible fracture," one of them said quietly to the other. "We'll get you taken care of," the second added gently. Evelyn nodded, though her hand reached out instinctively toward Alicia. Alicia took it without hesitation. "I'm here," she said. The paramedics carefully lifted Evelyn onto a stretcher, securing her in place. "Are you family?" one of them asked Alicia. Alicia hesitated, then shook her head. "No," she said. The paramedic glanced between them. "You coming with us?" he asked. Alicia looked at Evelyn, at the way her hand still held onto hers, at the unspoken fear in her eyes. Then she looked down at herself, soaked, cold, exhausted, with nowhere else to be anymore. She exhaled. "Yeah," she said. "I'm coming." Because at this point, what else was there to lose? As they loaded Evelyn into the ambulance, Alicia grabbed her folder from the bench. The edges were damp now, the corners bent, the careful order inside, probably ruined. She held it anyway, not because it would help her now, but because it was all she had left of the plan she had walked away from. The ambulance doors closed, the engine started. and as it pulled away into the gray Chicago morning, Alicia sat beside a stranger, knowing something in her life had just ended, but having no idea what had just begun. The ambulance moved fast, its siren cutting through traffic, lights flashing against wet streets and glass storefronts. Inside, everything felt smaller, tighter, more real. Alicia sat on the narrow bench along the wall, her knees close together, her damp clothes clinging uncomfortably to her skin. Across from her, Evelyn lay strapped to the stretcher, her face pale but more relaxed now that she wasn't fighting to stay upright. One of the paramedics adjusted an IV line while the other checked her pulse. "You're doing okay, ma'am," he said gently. "We'll be at the hospital in just a few minutes." Evelyn nodded faintly, her eyes shifting toward Alicia. "You stayed," she said, her voice softer now, almost surprised. Alicia gave a small shrug. "I said I would." Evelyn studied her for a moment, as if trying to place something. "Most people don't," she murmured. Alicia didn't respond. She just looked down at her hands. They were still shaking slightly, not from fear, from everything else, from the adrenaline wearing off, from the reality settling in, from the quiet understanding that the day she had planned so carefully had completely unraveled. The ambulance turned sharply, the motion pulling her back into the moment. The paramedic glanced at her. "You family?" he asked again, more casually this time. Alicia shook her head. "No, just someone who was there." The paramedic nodded once. "Not a lot of those these days," he said. Alicia didn't know what to say to that, so she stayed quiet. The ride didn't take long. Soon the ambulance slowed, then stopped. The doors opened. Cold air rushed in again, carrying a different smell this time. Cleaner, sharper. Hospital air. Bright lights overhead. Voices echoing. Controlled chaos. They wheeled Evelyn out quickly, the stretcher rattling slightly as it moved across the pavement and through the automatic doors. Alicia followed. Inside, everything felt overwhelming. People moved in every direction, nurses, doctors, patients, each one focused on their own urgency. Alicia stood there for a second, unsure where to go. Then one of the paramedics glanced back. "You can come with us," he said. She nodded and kept walking. They guided Evelyn into a curtained exam area, transferring her onto a hospital bed with practiced ease. A nurse appeared almost immediately, asking questions, checking monitors, noting details. "What's your name, ma'am?" she asked. "Evelyn Brooks," she replied, her voice still weak. "Date of birth?" Evelyn answered. The nurse typed quickly. "Do you have any emergency contacts?" Evelyn hesitated. "My son," she said. "Daniel." "Last name?" "Brooks." The nurse nodded, making a note. "We'll try to reach him." Evelyn's hand shifted slightly, searching again. Alicia stepped closer and took it without thinking. "I'm here," she said quietly. Evelyn relaxed just a little. After a few minutes, the paramedics stepped away, their job done. The nurse turned to Alicia. "And you are?" she asked. "Alicia Carter," she replied. "Family?" Alicia hesitated. "No," she said again. "I just helped her." The nurse looked at her for a moment longer than necessary. Not suspicious, but curious, like she was trying to understand something that didn't quite add up. Then she nodded. "All right, you can stay for now, but we'll need to reach her family." "I understand." The nurse disappeared behind the curtain, leaving them alone for the first time since the ambulance. The room felt quieter now, not silent, just contained. Machines hummed softly. Footsteps echoed faintly outside. Alicia pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down slowly. Her body finally felt the exhaustion. the weight of everything. Her clothes were still damp. Her hair had started to fall loose around her face. Her blazer, still draped over Evelyn, looked nothing like it had that morning. Evelyn opened her eyes again, turning her head slightly. "You should go home," she said. Alicia shook her head. "Not yet. You've already done enough." Alicia gave a small, tired smile. "I don't think so." Evelyn watched her carefully. "Why?" she asked. The question was simple, but it landed heavy. Alicia leaned back slightly in her chair, her eyes drifting toward the floor. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she spoke. "Because I know what it feels like," she said. Evelyn frowned slightly. "To be left alone," Alicia added. Evelyn's expression softened. Alicia continued. "Someone I loved needed help once," she said quietly. "And people just kept walking." Evelyn didn't interrupt. She just listened. Alicia swallowed. "I told myself if I ever saw something like that again, I wouldn't be one of those people." The words settled into the room, heavy, honest. Evelyn's eyes filled slightly, though no tears fell. "That's a hard promise to keep," she said. Alicia nodded. "Yeah, but you kept it." Alicia didn't respond to that, because she wasn't sure what it meant yet. Evelyn shifted slightly, wincing again as pain flared through her hip. Alicia leaned forward instinctively. "Easy," she said. Evelyn let out a slow breath. "You know," she said after a moment, "when you get older, you start to feel like you're disappearing." Alicia tilted her head slightly. "What do you mean?" Evelyn stared at the ceiling. "People stop seeing you," she said. "Not all at once, just little by little." Her voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "They talk around you, over you, past you, like you're not really there." Alicia listened. "You fall," Evelyn continued softly, "and suddenly you realize they weren't just ignoring you." She turned her head slightly toward Alicia. "They didn't think you mattered enough to stop." Alicia's chest tightened. She didn't say anything, because she understood that feeling too well. Evelyn studied her face. "But you saw me," she said. Alicia met her gaze. "Yeah," she said. "And you stopped." Alicia hesitated, then nodded. Evelyn gave a small, almost sad smile. "That matters more than you think." Alicia looked down at her hands again. "I hope so," she said. Because right now, it didn't feel like enough. Not compared to what she had lost. The curtain shifted slightly as someone walked past outside. Time moved. Slow, steady, unforgiving. Alicia reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone again. No new messages, no missed calls, nothing waiting for her. For the first time in a long time, she had nowhere she needed to be, nowhere she was expected. The realization felt strange, unfamiliar, almost unsettling. Evelyn noticed her expression. "What is it?" she asked. Alicia hesitated, then said it. "I had everything planned out today," she admitted. "Every minute." Evelyn smiled faintly. "And now?" Alicia looked around the room, at the machines, at the quiet, at the unexpected stillness. "Now, I don't know," she said. Evelyn nodded slowly. "Sometimes," she said, "those are the moments that change everything." Alicia let out a soft breath. "Or ruin everything." Evelyn's eyes softened again. "Or both." The words lingered, neither comforting nor discouraging, just true. Alicia leaned back in her chair, her body finally giving in to the exhaustion. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Two strangers, connected by something neither of them had expected. Outside, the hospital continued its endless motion. Inside, time slowed just enough for something else to take shape. Not a solution. Not yet. But something quieter. Something deeper. The beginning of a connection neither of them could have predicted. And somewhere, beyond the walls of that room, a chain of events had already started moving. Quietly. Unseen. And completely out of Alicia's control. That was the part that unsettled her most. Not the lost interview. Not the soaked clothes. Not even the uncertainty of what came next. It was the feeling that something had already shifted, somewhere beyond her reach, and she had no way of knowing what it was. Alicia sat quietly beside Evelyn, the faint hum of hospital machines filling the silence between them. Minutes passed. Then more. Time moved differently here. Slower. Measured not by clocks, but by footsteps in the hallway, by distant voices, by the occasional beep of a monitor. Evelyn had drifted in and out of a light sleep, her breathing uneven but calmer now. Alicia leaned forward slightly, resting her forearms on her knees, her hands loosely clasped together. Her phone sat face down beside her. She didn't want to check it again. There was nothing left to see. A sudden commotion broke the rhythm. Voices. Sharp. Urgent. Footsteps moving faster than before. Alicia looked up. Through the thin hospital curtain, she could see movement in the hallway, someone approaching with purpose. Not like the others. Not rushed. Not frantic. Focused. The curtain shifted, then pulled back, and he stepped in. The first thing Alicia noticed was the suit. Dark. Perfectly tailored. The kind of suit that didn't wrinkle in the rain. The kind that didn't belong in places like this. He was in his early 50s, maybe a little older, with silver threaded through his dark hair. His presence filled the room without effort, quiet authority, the kind that came from years of being listened to. His eyes went straight to the bed. "Mom." The word came out low, controlled, but there was something beneath it. Something real. Evelyn's eyes fluttered open. For a second, she seemed disoriented. Then she focused. "Daniel," she said softly. Alicia sat up straighter. Daniel Brooks. The name didn't mean anything to her yet. But something about him did. He crossed the room in 2 steps, his attention fixed entirely on Evelyn. His hand found hers, his grip firm but careful. "What happened?" he asked. His voice was steady, but there was tension under it. Evelyn glanced briefly at Alicia, then back at him. "The bus," she said. "I fell." Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. "And they just left you?" he asked. Evelyn hesitated, then said it plainly. "They made me get off." Something in Daniel's expression changed. Not dramatically, but enough. A flicker of something colder. He looked down at her hip, at the IV, at the monitors. Then his eyes shifted. To Alicia. For the first time, he seemed to notice her. Really notice her. She felt it immediately. The weight of it. Not judgment. Not yet. Just assessment. "Who are you?" he asked. The question wasn't rude, but it wasn't warm either. Alicia stood slowly, suddenly aware of everything. Her damp clothes, her wrinkled blouse, the way her hair had fallen loose. "I'm Alicia," she said. "I was on the bus." Daniel's eyes moved over her again, more carefully this time. "You were there when she fell?" "Yes." "And you stayed?" Alicia nodded once. "Yeah." Evelyn spoke before anything else could be said. "She didn't just stay," she said, her voice gaining a bit of strength. "She got off the bus with me. Daniel looked back at his mother, then at Alicia. His expression shifted again. "You got off?" he repeated. Alicia hesitated, then nodded. "I wasn't going to leave her." The room went quiet. Not awkward. Just still. Daniel studied her. Not in a dismissive way. Not in the way Alicia was used to. There was something else there. Something harder to read. "How long have you been here?" he asked. Alicia glanced at the clock on the wall. "Since this morning." "Hours?" he clarified. "Yeah." Evelyn squeezed his hand slightly. "She missed something important," she said. Daniel's eyes flicked back to Alicia. "What kind of something?" he asked. Alicia almost didn't answer. It felt irrelevant now. But Evelyn was watching her, so she said it. "A job interview." Daniel didn't react immediately, but something in his posture changed. "Where?" he asked. Alicia hesitated again, then said it. "Brooks Tech Dynamics." The name landed. Quiet. Heavy. Daniel's expression didn't shift right away, but Alicia saw it. That moment. That fraction of a second where something clicked. "You're serious?" he asked. Alicia nodded. "That's where I was supposed to be this morning." The silence that followed felt different from all the others. This one had weight. Daniel's gaze stayed on her own. Longer now, more focused. "What position?" he asked. "Junior data analyst." Evelyn looked between them, sensing something she didn't fully understand. Daniel exhaled slowly, then ran a hand briefly over his face. When he looked back at Alicia, his expression had changed. Not softer, but clearer. "You missed it because of this?" he asked. Alicia gave a small shrug. "I made a choice." Evelyn tightened her grip on his hand. "She saved me," she said quietly. Daniel didn't look away from Alicia. "I can see that." The words weren't dramatic, but they landed. Alicia didn't know what to do with them. She shifted her weight slightly, suddenly uncomfortable. "I should probably go," she said. It came out quickly, almost instinctively, like she had stayed too long in a place that didn't belong to her. Evelyn's hand moved again, reaching slightly. "Wait," she said. Alicia paused. Daniel glanced at his mother, then back at Alicia. "No," he said. "Stay." It wasn't a request, but it wasn't a command either. Just certain. Alicia hesitated. Every instinct she had told her to leave, to step out, to disappear back into the world where she understood the rules. But something held her there. Maybe it was Evelyn. Maybe it was the way Daniel was looking at her now. Or maybe it was that same feeling from earlier, that something had shifted, and she was already part of it. She sat back down slowly. Daniel watched her for another moment, then turned his attention back to Evelyn, asking the doctor questions as they stepped in, about her condition, the next steps, the surgery she would need. His voice was calm, precise, used to being answered. Alicia listened quietly. She didn't understand everything they said, but she understood enough. Evelyn would be okay. It would take time, but she would be okay. And somehow, that mattered more than anything else right now. After a few minutes, the doctor stepped out again. The room settled once more. Daniel stood near the bed, his hand resting lightly on the rail. Then he looked at Alicia again. "You said your name is Alicia Carter?" She nodded. "Yes." He studied her one last time, then said something she wasn't expecting. "I think we need to talk." Alicia blinked. About what? She didn't ask. Because somehow, she already knew. Whatever happened next wasn't going to be small. Alicia felt it in the way the air shifted, in the way Daniel Brooks stood there, calm but unmistakably focused, like a man who had already made a decision and was simply waiting for the moment to act on it. I think we need to talk, he repeated. Alicia's fingers tightened slightly around the edge of her damp folder. Every instinct in her told her to be careful. Men like him didn't exist in her world. Not really. They appeared on screens, in headlines, in offices she had never been invited into, and now one of them was standing in front of her, asking to talk. About what? She asked, her voice steady, though she could feel the tension underneath. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced at his mother. Evelyn watched them both, something almost knowing in her expression. She should hear it, Evelyn said softly. Daniel nodded once, then turned back to Alicia. You said you had an interview this morning, he said. At Brooks Tech. Yes. And you missed it because you stayed with my mother. Alicia hesitated. I chose to stay, she said. Daniel held her gaze. That choice matters. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Alicia shifted slightly in her seat. I don't expect anything from it, she said quickly. I didn't do this for... I know, Daniel interrupted. His tone wasn't dismissive. It was certain. That's exactly the point. The room went quiet again. Alicia didn't look away this time. She met his eyes, trying to understand what he meant. Daniel exhaled slowly. I'm Daniel Brooks, he said. Alicia blinked. The name settled differently now. Brooks. Brooks Tech. Her mind connected the dots in an instant. You're, she started. The CEO, he finished. There was no arrogance in the way he said it, just fact. Still, it landed hard. Alicia felt her pulse spike slightly. Not fear, not exactly. Something sharper. Awareness. Because now the room had changed. The man standing in front of her wasn't just a concerned son. He was the man who ran the company that had just rejected her. The man whose decision, directly or indirectly, had closed that door. A strange, quiet tension filled the space. Evelyn looked between them again. You didn't know? She asked Alicia. Alicia shook her head slowly. No. Daniel studied her reaction carefully. Most people would have shifted, changed their tone, their posture, their entire presence. Alicia didn't. She sat there, still damp from the rain, still holding the same worn folder, still herself. That seemed to register. Your interview, Daniel said, was scheduled with our analytics division this morning. Alicia nodded. Yeah. And you were a final round candidate. That surprised her. She hadn't known that. She had guessed, hoped. But hearing it out loud, it made the loss feel sharper. Daniel continued. Do you know how many applicants we had for that position? Alicia shook her head. Over 300. Alicia let out a small breath. And you made it to the final round, he added. The words weren't meant to comfort. They didn't. They just clarified something. She hadn't been close. She had been right there. Daniel paused, then said the thing that shifted everything again. I'd like to offer you another interview. Alicia blinked. Once. Twice. I'm sorry, what? A second interview, he repeated. A reschedule. Alicia stared at him. That's not how it works, she said. Daniel's expression didn't change. It is now. The words were calm, decisive, but Alicia felt something in her chest tighten again. Not relief, not yet. Suspicion. "I don't want a favor," she said. It came out sharper than she intended. Daniel didn't react negatively. If anything, something in his expression shifted again, just slightly. "It's not a favor," he said. "You were already qualified to be there this morning." "That doesn't mean I get a second chance," Alicia replied. "Maybe not," Daniel said. "But missing it because you chose to help someone isn't the same as not showing up." Alicia shook her head. "They don't see it that way." Daniel held her gaze. "I do." The words landed differently this time, not because of what they meant, but because of how he said them. Like he wasn't offering her sympathy. He was offering her something else. A recalibration. Evelyn squeezed Alicia's hand gently. "Please," she said, "let him do this." Alicia looked at her, then back at Daniel. Her thoughts moved fast. Too fast. Because this wasn't simple. If she accepted, what did that mean? That she needed saving? That she needed a powerful man to open a door she couldn't open herself? That everything she had worked for wasn't enough on its own? Her pride pushed back, hard. "I don't want to walk in there and have people think I'm only there because of this," she said. Daniel nodded. "That's fair." Alicia waited, expecting him to argue, to persuade. He didn't. Instead, he said, "Then don't walk in like that." Alicia frowned slightly. "Walk in as the candidate who earned her spot," he continued. "Because you did." He stepped a little closer, not invading her space, just enough to make sure she heard him clearly. "If you weren't qualified, you wouldn't have made it that far," he said. "Nothing about that has changed." Alicia swallowed. The logic was simple, but the situation wasn't. "People won't see it that way," she said quietly. Daniel didn't hesitate. "Then prove them wrong." The words hung in the air. Not loud, not dramatic, but solid. Evelyn watched Alicia carefully. "You already did the hardest part," she said softly. Alicia looked at her. "What's that?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "You chose who you are, when it cost you something." Alicia felt that. Deep. Because it was true. This morning had forced her to decide something. About herself, about the kind of person she wanted to be. And she had chosen, even knowing what it might cost. Daniel spoke again. "The interview will be Monday," he said. 10 a.m. Alicia blinked. "That soon?" He nodded. "I'll make sure your file stays open." Alicia hesitated. Everything inside her pulled in different directions. Fear, pride, doubt, hope. Because this wasn't just a second chance. It was a test, a different kind, one she hadn't prepared for. And somewhere deep down, a question surfaced. Was this really an opportunity, or the beginning of something far more complicated? Alicia took a slow breath, then nodded. "Okay," she said. Daniel gave a small, almost imperceptible nod in return. "Good." Evelyn's hand tightened slightly around Alicia's. "You won't regret it," she said. Alicia wasn't so sure, but she didn't say that out loud, because something about this moment told her, whatever came next, was going to test her in ways she hadn't imagined yet. And not everyone inside that building was going to be on her side. Monday morning arrived colder than the last. The rain was gone, but the city hadn't softened. Chicago stood sharp and gray under a pale sky, the kind that made every building look harder, taller, less forgiving. Alicia stood across the street from Brooks Tech Dynamics. Glass, steel, reflections of a world that didn't look like hers. She adjusted the sleeve of her blazer, the same one, now carefully pressed again, though the fabric no longer held its original shape. She had done her best with what she had. It would have to be enough. Her reflection stared back at her in the building's mirrored surface. Same face, same determination. But something had changed. She wasn't walking in as someone hoping for a chance. She was walking in as someone who had already paid a price. Alicia took a breath, then crossed the street. Inside, the lobby was everything she expected. Polished floors, soft lighting, quiet voices, people who moved like they belonged. She didn't hesitate this time, didn't shrink. She walked straight to the front desk. "I'm here for an interview," she said. "Alicia Carter." The receptionist typed quickly, then paused. Her expression shifted, just slightly. "Yes," she said. "You've been rescheduled." There was something in the way she said it. Alicia noticed. Of course she did. 15th floor, the receptionist added. "Conference room B." Alicia nodded. "Thank you." The elevator ride up felt longer than it should have. Not because of time, because of the silence. A man in a tailored coat stood beside her, scrolling through his phone without looking up. Another woman adjusted her badge, eyes flicking briefly toward Alicia before turning away. 15th floor. The doors opened. Alicia stepped out. The hallway was quieter here, carpeted, controlled. Conference room B sat at the end. The door was already open. Inside, 3 people sat waiting. Alicia stepped in. "Miss Carter," a woman said, standing to greet her. "Thank you for coming." Her voice was warm, professional. Alicia shook her hand. "Thank you for having me." The second man barely looked up. Late 40s, sharp features, controlled posture. This was Richard Cole. Alicia knew it before he even spoke. "Have a seat," he said, his tone flat. She did. The interview began simply enough. Background, experience, education. Alicia answered every question clearly, steadily. She knew her material. She had lived it. There was no pretending. But something felt off. Not from everyone. The woman across from her nodded along, genuinely engaged. But Richard, he wasn't listening the same way. His questions weren't curious. They were pointed, measured, testing something beyond her answers. "You freelanced after graduation?" he asked. "Yes." "Why not a full-time position?" Alicia met his gaze. "I had responsibilities outside of work," she said. "Such as?" "Family." Richard leaned back slightly. Not agreement, not understanding, just dismissal. The conversation moved on. Technical questions now. Data analysis, modeling, systems. This was her ground. Alicia leaned into it, explained clearly, confidently. For a moment, she forgot everything else. Forgot the bus. Forgot the hospital. Forgot the weight of how she got here. Because this was what she knew, and she was good at it. When she finished explaining a solution to a complex data problem, the woman across from her smiled. "That's impressive," she said. Richard didn't. He tapped his pen lightly against the table. "Textbook," he said. Alicia blinked. "I'm sorry?" "It's textbook," he repeated. "Anyone can memorize theory." The words landed, sharp, measured. Alicia felt something tighten in her chest. Not doubt, something else. Recognition. She had heard this tone before. Different words. Same meaning. Prove it, or you don't belong here. Alicia straightened slightly. Then give me something real, she said. The room shifted. Richard's eyes lifted. For the first time, he seemed fully engaged. You're confident, he said. I'm capable, Alicia replied. A brief pause, then, fine. Richard turned his laptop toward her. Here's a dataset, he said. Supply chain logs. Real client. Real problem. He leaned back. Find the inefficiency. Alicia didn't hesitate. She pulled the laptop closer. Focused. The data was messy, unorganized, but patterns. Patterns always existed. You just had to see them. Minutes passed, then more. The room faded. The pressure disappeared. There was only the data, only the problem, only the answer waiting to be found. Alicia moved quickly, sorting, filtering, testing. And then, there it was. A flaw. Not small, not subtle. A gap in the model. A missing variable. She sat back slightly, then explained it. Clear, direct, unshaken. When she finished, silence filled the room. The woman across from her looked impressed, even surprised. Richard didn't. He leaned forward slightly. Interesting, he said. But his tone had changed. Not impressed. Guarded. That model, he continued, was built by our senior team. Alicia held his gaze. Then it can still be improved. The words hung there. Bold, honest, dangerous. Richard's eyes narrowed slightly. Or, he said, you're misreading it. Alicia felt the shift. There it was. The line. The invisible boundary. She had crossed it. The room felt colder now, more rigid. Data doesn't lie, she said quietly. Richard's lips pressed into a thin line. Interpretation does. The tension thickened. Then, the interview ended. Too quickly. Too cleanly. We'll be in touch, the woman said. Alicia nodded. Stood. Left. But something didn't sit right. Not the questions. Not the answers. Something deeper. Something she couldn't quite name yet. Later that afternoon, it happened. Alicia's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Ms. Carter, a voice said. This is Brooks Tech HR. Her chest tightened. Yes? There was a pause, then. We need to inform you. There has been an issue. Alicia's grip tightened around the phone. What kind of issue? Your access credentials were used to download sensitive internal data during your interview session. The words didn't make sense at first. I'm sorry, what? There's a concern regarding data security, the voice continued. We are suspending your candidacy pending investigation. Alicia went still. That's not possible, she said. I didn't, Miss Carter. The voice interrupted, polite but firm. This is a serious matter. Silence filled the space between them. Alicia's heart pounded, loud, unsteady. Are you saying I stole something? She asked. We're saying your credentials were used. The distinction didn't matter. Not really. The result was the same. I didn't do this, Alicia said. But even as she said it, she could feel it. The shift. The narrative already forming. The conclusion already written. I understand your position, the voice replied. We'll be in touch. The call ended. Alicia stood there, phone still pressed to her ear. The city moved around her, Cars passed. People walked. Life continued. But something had just broken again. And this time, it wasn't just opportunity she lost. It was something worse. Her name, her credibility, her chance to ever be seen differently. Alicia lowered the phone slowly, and for the first time since stepping off that bus, she felt it. Not loss, not regret, but something colder. Someone had set this up, and she had just walked straight into it. The thought wouldn't leave her. It followed Alicia all the way home, through the rattling train ride, through the long walk past dim streetlights and shuttered storefronts, through the quiet click of her apartment door closing behind her. The room felt smaller than usual, closer, like the walls had leaned in overnight. Alicia set her bag down slowly, her movements automatic, her mind still replaying every second from that interview, every question, every glance, every shift in tone. Richard. It came back to him. The way he looked at her when she challenged the model, the way his voice tightened when she didn't back down, the way the room had gone cold the moment she proved something he hadn't expected. Alicia sank into the edge of the couch, her phone still in her hand. Her name, her credentials. Used to download internal data. It didn't make sense unless... Her thoughts stopped. No. She shook her head. That kind of accusation didn't come from nothing. And people like Richard didn't make careless mistakes. They controlled the narrative. She leaned forward, pressing her palms together, her breathing slow but tight. Someone had access to her credentials. But how? She closed her eyes, thinking back. The laptop. He handed it to her. She used it, logged in, typed her credentials. A slow, cold realization crept in. That machine, that system, it hadn't been neutral. Alicia's eyes opened, and for the first time, fear turned into something sharper. Clarity. Her phone buzzed. She froze. Another unknown number. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she did. Hello? Ms. Carter. The voice was familiar, controlled, measured. Daniel Brooks. Alicia sat up straight. Yes. There was a brief pause on the other end. I heard about what happened, he said. Alicia let out a quiet breath. So it's true then, she said. They think I did it. They think your credentials were used, Daniel corrected. The distinction again. It didn't comfort her. It wasn't me, Alicia said. I know. The words came immediately, without hesitation. Alicia blinked. You know? Yes. There was something in his tone now, not just belief, something firmer. I've been reviewing the internal logs, he continued, and the timeline doesn't match your interview session. Alicia's heart skipped. What do you mean? I mean, Daniel said, you couldn't have been in two places at once. Alicia stood slowly, every nerve in her body suddenly awake. Then someone else used my login, she said. Yes. The confirmation hit like a spark. And they're blaming me, Alicia added. Yes. The silence stretched for a moment. Then Daniel spoke again. I need you to come back in, he said. Alicia froze. What? I want you to look at something, he continued. The system logs, the raw data. Alicia frowned. Why me? Because you're the one being accused, Daniel said. And because you understand data. There was something else underneath that. Trust. Unexpected. Uncertain. But real. Alicia hesitated. They already think I did this, she said. If I go back, You'll be escorted, Daniel said calmly. You'll have limited access, but I'll authorize it. Alicia exhaled slowly. This wasn't normal. None of it was. But then again, nothing about this situation was. You want me to prove I didn't do it, she said. I want the truth, Daniel replied. The difference mattered. Alicia looked around her apartment, at the worn furniture, at the dim lighting, at everything she had been trying to escape. And then she thought about the bus, the choice she made, the cost she paid, and now this. She could walk away, accept what they said, let her name carry that accusation, or she could fight. Alicia's jaw tightened. I'll be there, she said. Tomorrow morning, Daniel replied. 9 a.m. The line went dead. The room fell silent again. But it didn't feel the same anymore. Not smaller. Not suffocating. Something had shifted. Alicia moved to her small table, pulled out a chair, and sat down. She opened her laptop. Not to apply for jobs, not to check emails, to think, to map it out. Login, time, system access. There were patterns in everything, even in lies. You just had to look hard enough. The next morning, the building felt different, not because it had changed, but because she had. Alicia walked in without hesitation. Security met her immediately. Polite, firm, professional. They escorted her upstairs. No reception desk this time. No waiting. Straight to a private office. Daniel was already there. The room was quiet, minimal, controlled. He didn't waste time. Sit, he said, sliding a laptop toward her. Alicia sat. The screen lit up. Lines of data, access logs, timestamps, IP addresses, system activity, her world, her language. 2 hours, Daniel said. That's what we have before legal gets involved. Alicia nodded. She didn't need more. Her eyes moved quickly, scanning, filtering, finding structure in chaos. There, her login, time-stamped. But she frowned. That's not right, she murmured. Daniel didn't interrupt. She kept going. Cross-referencing, time, location, system ID, and then she saw it, a discrepancy. Small, but real. Her login showed activity from 2 different terminals, within minutes. Impossible. Unless her fingers moved faster, tracing the IP address, mapping it back, through the internal system, down to a physical location. Her breath caught. Daniel saw it. What? He asked. Alicia didn't answer immediately. She clicked again, pulled another log. Badge access, entry records, cross-checking. Her heart pounded, louder now, faster, because the pattern was forming, and it led somewhere very specific. Alicia slowly leaned back. Her voice, when it came, was quiet. But you already knew that, didn't you? Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. Knew what? Alicia looked up at him. Steady, certain. This wasn't random, she said. She turned the laptop toward him. Her finger pointed at the screen, at the access logs, at the location data, at the one name that now stood out above everything else. This came from inside your own team. The room went still, because the truth wasn't just clear now. It was undeniable, and it was about to change everything. The room felt smaller, not physically, but in the way truth tends to do that. Pull everything inward, tighten the air, force every lie into the open. Daniel didn't speak right away. He looked at the screen, then at Alicia. then back at the screen again. His jaw tightened, just slightly. "Walk me through it," he said. Alicia nodded. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. That surprised her, because an hour ago, she had been fighting to prove she wasn't guilty. Now, she was holding something far heavier. "The login," she said, pointing to the screen, "shows my credentials were used from 2 different terminals within minutes." Daniel leaned closer. "That's not possible." "Exactly," Alicia replied. She clicked again, pulled up another layer of data. "Here," she said. "This terminal. This is the one I used during the interview." Daniel nodded. "And this one," she continued, switching windows. "This one is a different machine." She paused, then said it clearly. "Located in Richard Cole's office." The silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was recognition. Daniel's eyes hardened. Alicia kept going. "Now look at this," she said, pulling up the badge access logs. "Your system tracks physical entry, swipe records." She pointed again. Richard entered his office at 11:39 p.m. Daniel didn't blink. And the data download happened at 11:47. 8 minutes later. Alicia leaned back slightly. "That's your timeline," she said. Daniel's voice, when it came, was lower now, controlled. "Why use your credentials?" he asked. Alicia didn't hesitate. "Because I logged into the system earlier," she said. "During the interview. He had access to that machine after I left." Daniel's gaze sharpened, meaning he could capture your login session. "Or reuse cached credentials," Alicia added. Daniel exhaled slowly. Not frustration, not doubt, calculation, because this wasn't just an internal issue anymore. This was intent. Alicia studied him for a moment, then said the thing that had been sitting just beneath the surface. "He didn't just cover something up," she said. Daniel looked at her. "He needed me gone." The words landed, heavy, real. Daniel didn't argue, because he had seen enough. He straightened, picked up his phone, and dialed. "Conference room A," he said, when the line connected. "Now!" He hung up before anyone could respond, then turned back to Alicia. "Stay here." Alicia didn't move, didn't speak. She just watched him walk out of the room. And for the first time since all of this started, she felt something shift again. Not fear, not doubt. Something else, Tfa. The beginning of accountability. Minutes later, they were in conference room A. Larger, colder, glass walls, too much visibility, not enough comfort. Richard Cole was already there, standing near the far end of the table, arms crossed, expression unreadable. But his eyes moved the moment Alicia walked in. A flicker, gone just as fast. Daniel entered behind her, closed the door, and the room sealed. "Let's keep this simple," Daniel said. "No greeting, no small talk." Richard tilted his head slightly. "What's this about?" Daniel didn't sit. He remained standing, looking directly at him. "It's about last Thursday night," he said. Richard didn't react. At least, not on the surface. "I've already spoken to IT," Richard replied calmly. "They confirmed the breach." Daniel nodded once. "They confirmed the download," he said. "Not the source." A small pause. Then Alicia stepped forward. She placed the laptop on the table, turned it toward Richard. "Do you want to explain this?" she asked. Richard's gaze dropped briefly to the screen, then lifted again. Blank. Carefully blank. "I don't know what you think you're showing me," he said. Alicia didn't flinch. "The IP address," she said. "The terminal ID. The access logs." She tapped the screen once. "Your office?" The room went still. Richard's expression didn't change immediately. But something behind his eyes did. Something tighter, something sharper. Daniel spoke again. "Why were you in your office at 11:39 p.m.?" he asked. Richard shrugged lightly. "Work?" "And why," Daniel continued, "did Alicia's credentials access that terminal 8 minutes later?" A longer pause this time. Richard exhaled slowly, like a man deciding how much truth he could afford. "I was reviewing her work," he said. Alicia almost laughed, not out of humor, out of disbelief. "At midnight?" she asked. Richard's eyes snapped to her. "I don't need to justify my hours," he said. Daniel didn't look at Alicia. He kept his focus on Richard. "No," Daniel said quietly. "But you do need to justify this." He tapped the laptop once. The sound echoed louder than it should have. Richard's composure cracked. Just slightly. "Look," he said, his tone shifting now. "This is being blown out of proportion." "Is it?" Daniel asked. "Yes," Richard replied. "She's new. She made mistakes. I was cleaning it up." Alicia stepped closer, her voice calm, steady. "There was no mistake," she said. Richard's jaw tightened. "You don't understand how things work here," he snapped. "No," Alicia said quietly. "I understand exactly how this worked." That did it. Something snapped behind Richard's eyes. Not panic, not fear, something uglier. "You want to know how it works?" he said, his voice rising just enough to change the room. Daniel didn't interrupt. Richard looked at Alicia now, directly. "You come in here," he said. 3 weeks, no real experience in corporate systems, and suddenly you're questioning senior work." Alicia held his gaze. "I found a problem." "You found something you think is a problem," Richard corrected sharply. "And then what?" he continued. "You go around protocol. You escalate. You make noise." Daniel's voice cut in. "She followed procedure." Richard didn't even look at him. "She disrupted the team," he said. The words weren't about data anymore. They weren't about systems. They were about something deeper, something personal. Alicia felt it. Of course she did. She had felt it the moment she challenged him. "I didn't disrupt anything," she said. "I did my job." Richard laughed once, short, sharp. "No," he said. "You stepped out of line." Silence. Heavy. Then he said it. The thing he should have kept buried. "You don't belong here," he added. The words hit the room like glass breaking. Daniel moved, not physically, but something in him shifted completely. Cold. Final. Alicia didn't look away. She had heard worse, felt worse, survived worse. But this wasn't just about her anymore. Daniel stepped forward, slow, controlled. "You're done," he said. Richard blinked. "What?" "You're terminated," Daniel repeated. Flat. Final. Richard laughed again, but it sounded different now. Forced. "You're serious?" "Yes." Richard's composure cracked fully this time. "I built this division," he snapped. 8 years. "And you used those 8 years," Daniel cut in, "to abuse authority and sabotage internal trust." Richard's face flushed. "You're choosing her over—" "I'm choosing the truth," Daniel said. The room fell silent again. Richard looked at Alicia one last time, not with doubt, not with dismissal, but with something darker. Resentment. Then he turned, walked out. The door closed behind him, and just like that, The tension snapped. Gone. Alicia stood there, still, processing, because everything that had been stacked against her had just fallen. Daniel turned to her, his expression softer now, but still serious. "You were right," he said. Alicia let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. For the first time since the accusation, she felt it. Relief. Not loud, not overwhelming, but real. Daniel stepped closer. "We're going to fix this," he said. Alicia nodded slowly, but somewhere deep inside, a different question was forming, because being proven right wasn't the same as being safe, and she knew whatever came next wouldn't just be about clearing her name. It would be about where she stood, in a world that had almost erased her. For a long time after Richard walked out of that room, Alicia didn't move. She stood there, steady but quiet, as if her body needed a moment to catch up with everything her mind had just survived. The glass walls reflected her from every angle. The same woman who had stepped off a bus in the rain. The same woman who had sat in a hospital chair, soaked and invisible. The same woman who had been accused, doubted, almost discarded, and yet, still here. Daniel broke the silence. "We're going to correct the record," he said, "immediately." Alicia nodded, but her voice came slower. "That's not the only thing that needs correcting." Daniel studied her. He didn't interrupt, didn't defend, didn't rush to explain. He simply waited. Alicia stepped away from the table, her fingers brushing lightly against its polished surface. "This wasn't just about him," she said. Daniel's brow tightened slightly. "No," Alicia continued. "He was just the one who said it out loud." The truth sat there, uncomfortable, unavoidable. Daniel exhaled quietly. "You're right," he said. The admission wasn't loud, but it mattered, because it meant something else, too. Change wasn't going to come from denial. It was going to come from acknowledgement. Alicia looked at him. "Then what happens now?" Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to the window. Chicago stretched below them, busy, unaware, unchanged. For now. "We rebuild this," he said finally. "From the inside out." He turned back to her. "And I want you to be part of that." Alicia blinked. "What?" "You saw what others didn't," he continued. "You spoke when it would have been easier to stay quiet, and you didn't fold when someone tried to push you out." He paused. "That's not just skill, that's leadership." The word felt too big, too fast. Alicia shook her head slightly. "I just did what I was supposed to do." Daniel's expression softened. "Most people don't." Silence settled again, but it felt different now. Not tense, not heavy. Something else. A threshold. "Alicia," he said, "I'd like to offer you a position." Her breath caught. "Not just the one you interviewed for." She stared at him. "What do you mean?" Daniel stepped closer. "Director of Data Integrity." The room tilted. Not physically, but enough. "That's not..." Alicia exhaled. "That's not realistic." "It is," Daniel said, "because the problem we just uncovered, it's bigger than one person." He gestured lightly toward the door. "We need someone who understands both the systems and the consequences of ignoring them." Alicia felt her pulse rise again. Not fear, not exactly. Weight. Responsibility. "I don't even work here yet," she said. Daniel almost smiled. "That can be fixed." Alicia looked down briefly, then back up. "This isn't about me getting lucky," she said. "It's not," Daniel replied. "It's about you being ready when it mattered." Evelyn's voice echoed softly from behind them. "I told you," she said, standing near the doorway, supported lightly by a cane now. They both turned. She smiled gently at Alicia. "You didn't lose anything that day," Evelyn said. "You just took a different road." Alicia felt her chest tighten again. But this time, it wasn't from pain. It was from something fuller. Something that had been missing for a long time. Recognition. Not for survival. Not for endurance. But for who she was. Alicia took a slow breath, then nodded. "Yes," she said. The word was simple, but it carried everything. 1 year later, the city looked different in the sunlight. Not because it had changed, but because Alicia had. Bus 27 still ran its route through the same streets, still stopped at the same corners, still carried the same quiet, invisible stories. But one stop was new. Clean glass panels, a solid bench, better lighting, a small plaque fixed to the side. People gathered around it now. Not a crowd, not an event, just presence. Evelyn stood beside Alicia, her cane steady against the pavement. Daniel stood a few steps back, hands in his coat pockets, watching quietly. Alicia stepped forward. Her fingers traced the edge of the plaque. Cold metal, solid, real. She read the words silently. For those who choose to stop. The city moved around them. Cars passed. People walked by. Some glanced. Some didn't. Life continued, just like it had that morning. The morning everything changed. Alicia looked up. At the street. At the bus that pulled up in the distance. At the people stepping on and off without noticing anything unusual. Because for them, it wasn't. It was just another stop. But for her, it was the moment her life split into before and after. Evelyn stepped closer. "You built this," she said softly. Alicia shook her head. "We built it." Daniel smiled faintly behind them. Alicia turned slightly, looked at both of them, then back at the street, at the place where she had once stood, frozen between two choices. Stay or walk away. She could still feel it. That moment, that hesitation, that fear, and the decision that followed. Alicia exhaled slowly. "Funny," she said quietly. "What?" Evelyn asked. Alicia smiled. "Back then, I thought I was losing everything." Evelyn tilted her head. "And now?" Alicia looked out at the road, at the movement, at the people who would never know her story. "Now I know," she said. "I was finally becoming who I was supposed to be." The wind picked up slightly, soft, cool, carrying the sounds of the city with it. A bus pulled away from the curb. Another one approached, and somewhere in that constant motion, a choice was always waiting. Alicia stepped back from the plaque, stood still for one last moment, then turned, walking forward, not away from something, but into something she had built herself. And this time, she didn't hesitate, because she already knew. Some choices change everything, and some people are worth stopping for. When Alicia Carter stood in the rain and watched that bus drive away, she thought she had just lost the only chance that could change her life. But that single step onto the street became the moment that changed everything. This story isn't about luck. It's about what happens when you choose to act, even when it costs you. Because sometimes, one brave decision in the hardest moment can quietly rewrite your entire future. So the next time you see someone struggling, pause for just a second, like Alicia did. That one choice might not just change their life, it might change yours in ways you can't see yet. If this story touched you, comment 1 below. And tell me, have you ever made a choice that cost you something, but later meant everything? Because in the next story, someone will make that same kind of choice, and the outcome will shock you.